Stop the presses. The money printer-in-chief, Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Federal Reserve, told Congress today that the economy is getting back on track.
The U.S. economy is now in the 7th quarter of growth.
But is it really? Tonight, Fed critic Congressman Ron Paul, a true defender of the Constitution and author of End the Fed, reacts to Uncle Ben's rosy economic predictions.
Pretend that it's going down and everything is rosy. I think we're deceiving ourselves.
Then, Congressman Jason Chaffetz has an idea. Let's fire all the federal employees who don't pay their income taxes. But maybe they should be in jail instead. And economist Walter Williams says he'll give up his right to Social Security if the government gives him 100 acres of federal land instead. Is this the Social Security fix we've all been looking for? Also, Congressman Jeff Flake on whether the Defense Department is a sacred cow. All that and our freedom fighters, David Asman, Leslie Marshall, Peter Suderman. Even if Republicans and Democrats reach a deal on this year's budget, the $14.2 trillion federal debt limit is fast approaching. When will Republicans have the guts to say no to more debt? The type of courage that comes from these principles. That government is best which governs least. The people are entitled to a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. The Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs. Paul, Chaffetz, Blake, Williams, Asman, Marshall, Freedom Watch. The revolution continues now. Tonight on the docket, Ben Bernanke, the economy, your money, and debt. Today, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke testified in front of the House Financial Services Committee on the state of the weak economy, the massive federal debt, and the rapid declining value of the dollar. These issues are intimately related because as the federal government spends money it does not have, it has to borrow and borrow and borrow more money to pay its bills. But when the government borrows, Mr. Bernanke and the Fed lend a helping hand because the Fed can create money out of thin air. And this lowers the value of all dollars, which makes it much easier for the government to keep borrowing even more. But there is a cost. The dollars you hold in your bank account, the dollars you work hard for and save, the dollars you use to buy food and gasoline lose value every time Uncle Ben has the Fed create money. That's called inflation. Under Uncle Ben's watch, food prices have gone up by almost 15%, and gasoline prices have jumped more than 30%. See, America, you pay for a wasteful government spending not only in tax dollars, but at the grocery store and the gas station as well. So what's going on with the value of the dollar? Here now to explain, one of the staunchest defenders of the Constitution in the Congress and one of the few who truly understands the menace of the Federal Reserve and the author of the bestseller, End the Fed, Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman Paul, welcome back to Freedom Watch. Were you surprised at anything that Ben Bernanke said today under oath as you interrogated him?
No, but did he say anything? He didn't say anything, so I'm not surprised. When I asked him about what the definition of a dollar is, he said it's whatever it buys, because he manages the dollar, he runs the economy, he's a central economic planner, and they have no idea what a dollar is, and I think it's on purpose. But like you said in your introduction, the Congress spends the money and the Fed provides the funds. So it's a relationship that's been around for a long time, and the Congress sort of knows what's going on. That's why I would say, don't let the Fed ever monetize our debt. Don't let them buy the debt. Interest rates would go up, and the Congress would have to quit spending. You wouldn't have, the Fed is always telling the Congress quit spending the money, but there's more to it than just that.
Didn't he complain that he's worried about interest rates going up? And isn't that what he should rejoice in rather than worry about?
Well, he doesn't want interest rates to go up. He just wants the inflation to go up so that the real debt goes down. So when he talked about inflation, he says, well, I know what to do if we have too much inflation or too little. Can you imagine that the deliberate policy of a government is to have like 2.5% inflation or destruction of the value of the currency? It's still theft. It's ruining the economy. It causes a malinvestment. But That's a deliberate policy. He's annoyed that he hasn't generated more inflation. He prints the money, but the people aren't using the money fast enough. So, but now it's starting to happen. Now we're moving into a different era. And these last couple of months, I'll tell you, I think the indication is very strong that the price inflation is coming, but he says, no, it's still at 2%. But he doesn't count energy and food, exclude that, and therefore the people are okay because his measurement is only 2%. But the free market, shadow stats with free market economists, they're reporting that the CPI, the old CPI is going up at the rate of 9% right now. It's probably actually even worse than that.
Because he's pumping cash into the marketplace, into the money supply, because he's creating this cash, and prices are going up, he's willing to look at prices of things that are not going up rather than things as basic as food and energy, which every human needs in this country. He's telling you to look elsewhere instead of at the basics.
Yeah, and he's not alone. It's been done for a long time. They're there to, and evidently the markets like it. If Bernanke or a Federal Reserve Board chairman saying, well, they might not even believe it, but they say, oh, he's saying it, so therefore the reaction is going to be such and such. But Bernanke or any chairman is incapable of telling the truth because he has to know, the problems ahead. And just look at how many times did he deny there was a bubble. I mean, I don't believe that he was unaware of it, but he couldn't say it. What if in 2007 he said, there's a big bubble out there and it's going to burst? I mean, it would have been a calamity. So he's paid to, in a way, deceive the marketplace and deceive the people into thinking that things are much better than they really are. But the goal of others should be to tell the truth and let the American people know what's really going on.
One of the few people who saw that bubble is the person to whom I'm now speaking. But I want to switch gears a little bit because while you were interrogating Fed Chair Bernanke on the House side, Senator John Kerry on the Senate side said the following, we're going to play it for you, about Libya and a no-fly zone and the American military getting involved in an effort to oust Colonel Gaddafi. Take a listen.
That the global community cannot be on the sidelines while airplanes are allowed to bomb and strafe. A no-fly zone is not a long-term proposition, assuming the outcome is what all desire. And I believe we ought to be ready to implement it as necessary.
Do you think that the American government is preparing to get involved militarily in this revolution in Libya? And if they are, haven't they learned, for heaven's sakes, the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan and the lessons of Egypt and Tunisia, where we at least ostensibly were not involved?
No, they haven't learned. Yesterday on the International Relations Committee, Secretary Clinton was there, and I asked her precisely that because she said in her statement, no options are off the table. All options are on the table, whatever. And I even brought this up in context of what the previous administration said when they would be asked about all options, and even nuclear action was never taken off the table. I threw that out, and she did not deny it one bit. Yes, they're getting ready to use military power. It'll be for humanitarian reasons, of course. And there's been some people who got killed there in the violence. But how many innocent people have been killed in Afghanistan and Iraq at the hands of our military? Right. And we're flat out broke. We don't have more troops. And I was just told today that some of the Marines were sent from the States already, toward Libya. So yes, we're getting ready to. They have no sense whatsoever. We're bombing in Pakistan. We're involved in Yemen and Somalia. We're not successful in Iraq or Afghanistan as far as I'm concerned. And here we are, we're going to take on Libya. It will end when this country goes bankrupt, and we're fast approaching that point.
Last question. Do the people in Iraq and Afghanistan have the same right to overthrow the American-installed governments as the people in Egypt and Tunisia did last month?
Well, obviously not, because they were demonstrating and they were arrested by the government that we own. So, yes, there were 300 arrested by the Maliki government in Iraq because they were demonstrating. So I would say that our success at providing a free society for Iraq is a total failure. and that they do not have freedom. There's less freedom of religion there. The Christians have all been run out. Even under that horrible dictator Saddam Hussein, he was more tolerant of Christianity than the current government is in Iraq. So to me, it's a total failure. When you think of the cost in life and limb and money, it's just ridiculous. And here it is. They won't even pause. They're getting ready to go to Libya in order to prove that we're good people and that we know how to police the world and take care of everybody and make sure Libya comes out okay. And we're doing the same thing in Egypt as well. We're working behind the scenes. It's just not as violent. But we're there. We're involved with their military. We're ready to prop up the next dictator and send out another $70 billion to prop them up as well.
Thank you. Congressman Paul, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Members of Congress searching for ways to erase the spiraling federal deficit should consider holding their own employees to the same standards as every other American taxpayer. Listen to this. The IRS estimates that in 2009, nearly 100,000 federal workers owed $1 billion in unpaid income taxes, up 70% since 2004. My good friend, Utah Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz, says the feds owe it to the taxpayers that employ them to pay what they owe. So he's proposing legislation that would terminate any government employee that has terminated his job and prohibit hiring future employees with seriously delinquent tax debt. But if you or I don't pay our taxes, what happens to us, Congressman Chaffetz? We go to jail. Representative Chaffetz, welcome back to Freedom Watch. How serious a problem is this? Federal employees not paying their taxes. What's delinquent? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How far back does it go?
Well, it could go back for any period of time, but these are people who have exhausted the adjudication process. They've gotten to a point where the IRS has actually put in a tax lien. It just doesn't seem fair that they're being paid by federal taxpayers, but they're not paying their own taxes. And so the bill says if you get to that point, then you're fired. There are too many people that are doing the right thing. And to answer the other part of your question, this problem's getting worse, not better, because just 5 years ago, there was about $600 million in uncollected. Now that's gone to up over $1 billion.
All right, you know, because you're a lawmaker, that a lot of laws would have to be changed to allow the government to fire somebody because of a private dispute with another branch of the government. There's all kinds of civil service protection that they have. So you have a lot of problems on your plate. This is not the biggest of them. Are you raising this to make a point, or are you raising this because you really want to change the law and allow federal supervisors to fire their employees when they haven't paid their taxes on time?
No, I want to get them fired because actually the IRS did not have a very good compliance rate. So the law was changed and allowed the IRS to do this to their own employees. Well, guess what? Now they have the highest compliance rate. So I'm actually taking that law and I just want to give that same ability to the Department of Interior, to the EPA, to all these other agencies. And interestingly enough, Judge, back in January of 2010, President Obama actually went in the Rose Garden on January 20th and actually made a plea that federal contractors should not get contracts. They should actually be dismissed from contracts if they don't pay their taxes. So I've introduced a companion bill that says, okay, you do it for contractors, but you should also do it for federal employees.
So you're serious about this. I want to switch gears because there's a lot of activity going on around you. I don't necessarily mean the people behind you, but in the Capitol building where you are. And one of them may be some sort of a compromise between the Republican leadership in the House and the Democratic leadership in the Senate and the White House to allow the government debt ceiling to go up without serious cuts in spending that you and other fiscal conservatives have been arguing for. Will Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah vote to raise the debt ceiling if the Republicans cut a deal with the president that lets him borrow more without spending less?
No, absolutely not. The leadership may think that they can go do that, but I actually get some pretty strong signals from Speaker Boehner and Eric Cantor and Ken McCarthy and others to say, no, we can't bring our membership along unless we're actually reducing and dramatically reducing spending. So, no, absolutely not. There is no reason to raise the debt ceiling if we're not going to get serious about cutting spending.
Are we going to have a serious debate about the role of the federal government in our lives, about how long entitlements are going to go on, and about limiting the